This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined the Patreon or become a YouTube member. Thank you. If you could, please hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Cavs-focused content. Cleveland Cavaliers have the best record in the NBA. And look, probably the funnest team in Cleveland to talk about right now. So in order to do that, I got Danny Cunningham on the show with me. The Cavs sitting at the 1 seed. They got out of that tough stretch there where they almost lost to it. Well, they lost to Atlanta 2 times. You know, it was right before Thanksgiving, right after Thanksgiving. And then they come back, finish strong with a strong performance versus Boston. They beat the Denver Nuggets. You feel much better. And then on the back-to-back, they lose to Miami. But I really was not tripping about that loss. I haven't seen that many people tripping about that one because it's like, okay, back-to-back Miami. And I think you've pointed out before, the Cavs never win down there.
No, they're like 16-51 in franchise history in Miami. It is a place that no matter how good the Cavs are, no matter how bad the Heat are, no matter how good the Heat are, no matter how bad the Cavs are, you can kind of throw the team's record out the window when they play in Miami. Just they're probably not going to win. Like I don't think the entire time after LeBron was in Miami when he came back to Cleveland. So for that 4-year stretch, I think they lost every game they played in Miami. They never win there.
There was some crazy games too. Because what?
Right.
Remember the one where Tristan had like 27 and 20 or something like that? And like
they
Wayne
lost
Ellington.
On Christmas the 1 year. It's just like, man, they could not find a way to win in Miami. They are, I think, since 2010. So since LeBron left Cleveland for Miami, I believe they're 3-18 in Miami against the Heat. Like it is absurd how rare it is for them to win in Miami.
And like the weird thing is like, don't the Cavs own like the biggest margin of victory over Miami? But that's like a game.
I think
in
they
Cleveland.
do. Right. I think they beat Miami by like 50 in a game. And this was way back in the day, I believe. But yeah, it's wild how difficult it is for them to win in that one. So, like they have a better winning percentage historically in Boston against the Celtics than they do in Miami against the Heat. It's just absurd.
Yeah, it's weird how that happens in sports where it's like, oh yeah, just one place you're just never gonna win at. It's like it is what it is. Like it's like generations of players like can't get it done. And it makes absolutely no sense because there's nothing tangible that suggests there. But with Miami, it might be something tangible because it is Miami. And like maybe you get scheduled like an odd amount of back-to-backs in Miami because how flight works. There has to be an actual reason, right? Like,
I mean, if you've been to South Beach, if you've been to Miami, you might have an idea of what that reason could be historically, why maybe they don't win a ton of games there. And maybe, I don't know. I was not on this trip. I have no idea what went on. But I don't know that with this being a back-to-back, maybe there's a chance if that game in Charlotte is at 7 o'clock on Saturday night instead of 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon, maybe they win Sunday in Miami. I don't know.
Yeah, I think also it just like if we're just talking about like the on the court aspect, it didn't help that they did let Charlotte back into that game in the fourth and then had to play their starters kind of deep into that fourth where I was like, oh, that's gonna cost you on the back-to-back. Like, you can't let that happen. You really, especially when Charlotte had none of the recognizable players out there, right? Like it was like, I think, who was it that was playing? Was it Taj Gibson that started for him?
Taj Gibson, yeah, man. Taj Gibson, he got the start. He pulled the chair out from Evan Mobley one time. Man, that is a guy that's just been around for a long time. He's been around. I'm a little surprised he's not like the 15th guy on the Knicks just because he's such a Tibbs guy.
Yeah.
Where he was, he was with Tibbs in Chicago. He was with Tibbs in Minnesota. I believe he was with Tibbs in New York for a little bit. It's surprising that he's just not with Tibbs still.
Yeah. He's one of those guys where I remember the last time the Cavs had played the Hornets, I thought I saw him at the end of the bench. And I'm like, no way, that's Taj Gibson, dog. Like he's still in the league. It's nuts. Because he used to be that was a Boozer and him and then Joakim Noah with Bulls back in the day. They always used to get
he was on those
wins.
Good Bulls team. Man, he's made himself a lot of money. He's been around for a very long time. I don't know how many years his career has been, but he has stuck around in the NBA. He was a rookie in 2009, 2010. So good for him for making this a very long career.
Hey, look, the end of the bench. Look, extras to Thompson. That's a good spot. It's a good
Yeah.
spot. 15th guy on
Oh
the
yeah.
bench, but a veteran enough to where you not on the you not playing in Canton, right? Like, or it's not Canton, it's Cleveland now, but you know, you're not playing
Right.
in that G League. You're not having to go to Sioux Falls every once in a while. You know, I feel like that's a good spot to be in. But the
There
Cavs,
for vibes.
yeah, this is off conversation, but I was just thinking about this when I found out that Miami's G League affiliate is in Sioux
It's
Falls, South Dakota.
right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
somebody feels like they got scammed. Like that team has 12 players, 5 of them absolutely feel like they got robbed.
Right. I was actually talking with somebody about the G League and that yesterday. And, Miami loves it because they feel like they can send people there for 2 weeks and they know they're going to be there for a little while. But also with the invention of the two-way contract and how quick some of these call-ups have to be, like for the Cavs, the Charge and the Cavs practice at the same facility in Independence. They both practice at Cleveland Clinic Courts. So they get to be around the parent club all the time, which is a really big deal for them. And, say that something happens and they need Luke Travers. Well,
Mhm.
the only difference in where Luke Travers is driving for a game is if he has to go to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse or if he has to go to Cleveland Public Hall, where the Chargers are going to start playing their games on Friday. If you're in Miami, like if you're on a two-way with the Heat, you could be in South Beach or you could be in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Like there's a huge difference there. And it's like a 4.5 hour, 5 hour flight too. Like it's not an easy thing to go from one to the other where, Luke Travers or Monty Bates or JT Thor's just has to make a different turn downtown.
And there's one flight, right? Like there is one flight. They get
Right.
there's not a lot of options. There's not, hey, we'll rent a pilot to get you out here, something like, no, 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 man. You got to be on that plane, and that plane might leave at 2 o'clock. And that's just what it is. And I don't even know how you get there, right? Because it's like there's not a ton of infrastructure out there. So it's fascinating they chose South Dakota, of all places, to put that G League team. Because I get it. There's probably like a market there, and there's going to be fans that buy tickets and like actually care about the team. But man, that is a tough sell. that is
Yes. Yes, it is.
You got to pay for luggage at least, right? Like you got to have two bags of luggage on deck at all times. The Cavs at an interesting place in this season where they have this nice stretch of games they get before they get this break before Christmas. Then they come back from Christmas and then they get that West Coast trip, right? And
Hmm.
anybody who's watched Cavs season knows those West Coast trips, they're tough. It's the toughest stretch of the season, right? What do you feel like the Cavs need to achieve win-loss record-wise before they get on that trip? Like, do you feel like they have to bank some wins here because they might drop like a schedule loss here or there because of all the travel they're going to be doing after?
It's going to look like. And then Utah, like the Cavs should win 4 of those 5 games at minimum if they just handle their business before they go out west. And then that West Coast trip is going to be difficult because you've got Denver, Golden State, LA, Dallas. Like that's a difficult stretch of basketball games, but it's also where they should be like, you know, 25 and 5 maybe before they go out
Mm-hmm.
west and you're no matter what's going to happen because they're not going to get swept out west, right? Like they're a good enough team that we can say, Denver's a difficult place to win, but they just showed that
Recording
they
in
kind of have a
progress.
blueprint to beat Denver pretty well. The Lakers is always a tough game because that's a team that the Cavs don't historically play well against, especially with it being the second night of a back-to-back after playing in Golden State the night before. Dallas is playing really great basketball. Like that's a tough trip, but the Cavs shouldn't go 0 for 4 on that trip either. Like that would raise some eyebrows if that happens.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think the Cavs. I don't know. They're at such a weird place with people nationally and with some of the fan base where, despite this team providing overwhelming evidence that they're a really good basketball team this year, it feels like the second something could go wrong, like people just go off the edge with it. Like it was fascinating watching the reactions to Atlanta games because I was like, I watched them. I watched one of them live, and my reaction was like, oh, they're not shooting well. They're having a horrible shooting night, like 2 times in a row. One game's before Thanksgiving, the other one's after Thanksgiving. That's usually when shit happens, right? Like, okay, weird night, you didn't shoot well, maybe you were a little distracted. It is what it is. It's a long season in the NBA. But then I started checking what the takes were, and it was like, oh man, we're fraudulent. We're gonna get killed. We need to go trade for Kyle Kuzma right now, or something
Oh my
like
goodness.
that. Like, I know the Cavs need, when you look at the roster, the Cavs have a need for wing. Do you think Kyle Kuzma is an answer there? Like, what do you feel like would be an appropriate trade target for the Cavaliers? It is that guy Kyle Kuzma.
So the trade market's going to be really interesting, I think, this year because one, the collective bargaining agreement really complicates what teams are allowed to kind of trade with what other teams. And the
Mm,
Cavs are in an interesting spot where, I would be surprised, not to say it can't happen, but I would be surprised if Kyle Kuzma ends up in Cleveland because my thinking would be, well, the Washington Wizards are going to want a first round pick, if not multiple first round picks for Kyle Kuzma, who's a fine player on a really, really bad team. But the Cavs have one first round pick that they can trade. That first round pick is in 2031. They can't put any protections on it. So, like, if they trade it, it is gone as is. Kyle Kuzma's not worth that. I also don't know that they want to trade away any of their complementary players right now for somebody who you don't know how he's going to fit. You don't know how he's going to fit in the locker room. At least I don't. The Cavs might have a better idea of that. I expect the Cavs to do something near the trade deadline. Now, that is still a couple of months away. I think it's just under 2 months from right now, but I don't know that it's going to be big. I kind of get the feeling that if the Cavs do something big at the trade deadline, it has to be like really, really big because they don't have the capability to trade first round picks, plural. Like they have that one first round pick that I mentioned. Um, and I think it becomes a really, really difficult thing for me to envision happening. Like if they're going to do something big, they're probably going to have to trade one of the guys in the core four. And I don't know that they
mm.
want to do that.
I don't feel like this is the year where you would even want to make that
Right.
move, right? Like, it doesn't really make too much sense. Um, how do the Cavs compensate for some of that lack of length, the lack of wings that they have? Like, is it just going to be Dean Wade? Is it going to be Isaac Okoro kind of out there in the perimeter, or kind of using Evan Mobley, and funneling guys towards them? Like, do you think that those solutions that they have for, the hole in their roster there is going to be enough to hold up when you start playing against, like, the tougher teams, or the teams that have those strengths at those specific spots?
So I think Max Strus will help too when he gets back
Yeah.
from an ankle injury, which should be pretty soon. I don't know if he's going to play Friday. I don't know if he's going to play Monday. I don't know if he's not going to play until next Friday. But I had been told that middle of the month is kind of the time to expect Max Strus to be back on the floor for the Cavs. So that will be something that helps. I think defensively that they do a good job of funneling things to the big guys in Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley. But I also think in certain matchups the Cavs could probably use Evan Mobley as a wing defender a little bit more than they have. One of the
Mm-hmm.
things that's been really interesting to me in watching the Cavs and in some of the games that we've talked about, right? Like the Boston game a couple Sundays ago where they came back to win, those games against Atlanta, teams will get Evan Mobley switched out onto the perimeter. Like this happened against Atlanta and Trae Young a number of times. And typically you'd think, okay, Trae Young got Evan Mobley switched onto him. He's a big guy. Trae Young's a quick guard. He's going to want to attack him and try and get to the basket, maybe try and draw a foul, create space, whatever. And Trae Young had no interest in doing that. He was going to pass out of it because he doesn't view that as an advantageous situation. Jason Tatum had a couple of instances like that where he passed out of it as well. Now he was a little bit more aggressive in attacking Evan Mobley, but for the most part, you're seeing star players on other teams when they get Evan Mobley defending them, they're like, "No thanks, man. We're gonna go elsewhere with our offense right now." And that I think is the biggest compliment to this Cavs defense and to Evan Mobley individually. But it also tells me that the Cavs can probably do a little bit more when these games start to matter more in the postseason in terms of putting Evan Mobley on the most difficult wing assignment on the roster, depending, of course, how the other team lines up. Like if they're going to play two bigs, you're probably asking too much of Max Strus to have him defend a four. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're playing a smaller team that's got a really dynamic wing, there's no reason why Evan Mobley can't be defending Jason Tatum regularly in the postseason.
I wonder if they'll do the George Niang at the 4 thing in the playoffs, right? Like, because they go to that lineup a lot, right? Where it's like Evan, George, and then they'll run out, like whatever smattering of guards they have healthy. I wonder they'll continue to do that, or if that switches up once Max comes back, and like there's going to be different players kind of filling those roles. You talked about Evan Mobley, and like you mentioned something there that makes him just so underappreciated. I think is the fact that he can carry that load defensively. Like it's crazy. A big that could get out there and be a perimeter defender and potentially be a wing defender, while also providing the defense that he does around the rim, with helping and everything else that he does. And then Evan Mobley has added his name to the hat of guys who might be capable of getting you 40. Right now, the Cavs have with 3 guys now who you be like, they might get you 40, right? If things are dropping right. Evan with that fantastic 3-point shooting night. What I am so encouraged about when I see Evan Mobley's game offensively is his game has never looked unnatural offensively. It
Sure.
just didn't drop as much as you would want it to in earlier years. Now it feels like he's getting a better feel for how to score. There's still some times where the ball like just magically shoots out of his hand. Like him and Karis LeVert just have that problem for whatever reason, where it's like it just looks it looks like a video game glitching sometimes, where it's like, oh, the ball just flew out of Evan Mobley's hand. But I imagine that gets better over time. When you look at the growth of Evan Mobley, both in the context of this season and in the larger context of his career, where do you see him not landing, but like, where do you see his growth? Like, how big of a star is there in Evan Mobley? Because like, I think so many people just discount the defensive stuff too. It's like,
Right.
who's
Right.
out there that can, potentially get you 40 offensively, but also at 7 feet tall, guard wings, like, and then be a strong, around the hoop defender.
It's not a long list, and I think that the answer as far as like where his game is going and how good he can be is different this year than it is in the future. Like I think that his game is expanding as we saw in Charlotte and that even that home game against Denver too. Now beyond the 3-point arc a little bit, where he's starting to take a little bit more threes, and that's still a small sample size. But the shot, you're right, it's never looked bad. I think at times the trajectory has been a little bit flat. And I think there's more arc in it this year, and that's been why the ball's been going in the hoop a little bit more. But I think that's probably going to be the biggest difference in his game from the start of this season to the end of this season. But then you also look at how much stronger he's been, where he's attacked the basket and he's been more confident. He's putting his shoulder into guys' chests, and he wasn't doing that before. And when he was doing it, it wasn't nearly as successful as it is now. He's drawing more contact. He's playing through that contact in a great way. And that's probably something that long term is just going to keep getting better. Like, I don't think he's going to end up being Giannis Antetokounmpo, but I think that he's going to have some pretty similar traits. Like you see what he looks like in the open floor. It reminds you of Giannis. When he's starting to put his chest into guys, it's kind of how Giannis looked like a year and a half, 2 years before he won his first MVP. And that's kind of where I think Evan is right now. I think that he still is somebody that is, when he gets to his prime, which I don't think he's anywhere near right now, I think he's capable of being a top 5, top 10 player in basketball. Like he's got that kind of skill set on both ends of the floor. You're starting to see him put it together offensively. Defensively, I don't know how much better he can get. Like he's incredible on that end of the floor. I don't know how much more room he has to grow, but I never cease to be amazed by what he can do defensively. When you combine those things, that to me screams all NBA player. I don't know if he's going to be an all NBA player this year, but after watching him, and I get it, he's played I think 24 games this year so far because he missed one because he was sick. But in this 24 game sample size for him, he looks like somebody who is much better than he was before, but still has a lot that he can tap into that he hasn't quite gotten to yet.
Yeah, and like when I watch Evan and you brought it up, I wonder because he looks like he's just going to be able to get physically a lot stronger over the next couple of years, right? Like you're going to see that leap with him that you saw with Giannis. And I wonder if this would be a thing that we talk about where it's like kind of like how people talk about like, oh yeah, KG used to bring the ball up court, right? Or Shaq used to be a point guard at times for the Magic. And it's like, are we gonna be like, yeah, man, look, when Evan was young, he used to guard them wings, dog. Like he used to be out there in the perimeter, like shuffling his feet, keeping up with these dudes.
I don't think he's going to put on that type of weight to where he's not going to be that type of guy. Like I think Evan is kind of on an Anthony Davis type of track to where, thinking in the best way that I talked about this summer primarily, when there was a thought that maybe Jared Allen could be somebody that gets moved, is remember that Lakers team in 2020 that won the title, and their starting five was Anthony Davis at the four, and they would start either Dwight Howard or JaVale McGee at center, depending on who was healthy, kind of depending on the matchup, stuff like that. But then they were always at their best when Anthony Davis was playing center. And it was easy to sit down Dwight Howard or JaVale McGee at that point in their careers because they were, I'm hesitant to say washed up, but Dwight Howard was not the defensive player of the year that Dwight Howard once upon a time was. He was
We
not
got
the
to take a
dominant
time
force.
out. We got
What?
You can't do that to Dwight Howard and say Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee as if they were ever
That's
peers.
who it was though.
No,
They were at the same point in their career though, is what I'm saying. Yes, obviously when Dwight was younger, he was
Dwight was washed.
far and away
JaVale
better than
McGee
anything.
was JaVale McGee.
Which you could say was always washed.
Yeah, like he doesn't
but-
even get the honor of being washed.
That's a 3-time champion, JaVale McGee. And Cavs legend too.
And Shaq the Fool pioneer, right?
Absolutely there. But they could sit those guys down and play Anthony Davis at center when they needed to, but they didn't want to always play Anthony Davis at center. That's kind of how I view Evan Mobley always being. Like he's going to be somebody, and right now the Cavs are at their best when he's playing center. He's always going to be able to do that, but I don't think he's ever exclusively going to be that, not somebody that can go out onto the perimeter and play defend wings. Like I think that there's a better chance that Evan Mobley becomes somebody that is capable of playing some small forward in his career than somebody who gets pigeonholed into only ever being a center.
Yeah, and I've made the comp to like Anthony Davis in the past because like if you just look at college stats, like there's only one other guy who was that dominant defensively as Evan Mobley was at that level, and it's Anthony Davis. And look, I think sometimes people get like a kind of tainted image of Anthony because he never was able to stay healthy consistently throughout his career. But if Anthony Davis was able to stay healthy, like how we talk about him and probably the Lakers and every other team he's been on, it's just drastically different, right? And if Evan hasn't shown to have the same injury issues that Anthony Davis has had, especially early in his career, it's like if he could be that, then yeah, you're sitting in a really good place, and then you have a young scorer in Darius Garland, and then obviously Donovan Mitchell. How many All-Stars do you think the Cavs have this year, Dan?
I think they've got 3. Donovan is a no-brainer. I think he's been one of, if not the best shooting guard in the NBA so far, and no one's going to argue with you about having, the best player on a team that's 21-4 be in the All-Star game. So that's really not a discussion. But I think that Darius Garland and Evan Mobley both deserve to be on the All-Star team. Darius is having the best year of his career. It's a great story, bouncing back from the fractured jaw and everything else he went through last year. But he's been phenomenal. Evan Mobley has stepped up. He's been just as good. And, we just talked about how good he is defensively. Offensively, he's taken his game to a new level. And then you also have to kind of got to look at the rest of the Eastern Conference too, right? Like Franz Wagner, I thought he was going to be an all-star. Well, now he tore his oblique. He's not going to make an all-star team. Paulo Banchero, in the 5 games he played this year, sure looked like somebody that was going to be on an all-star team. Well, now he hasn't played in 6 weeks, so you kind of have to count him out. Trae Young is shooting like 35% from the floor and 31% from 3. Yeah, he's averaging 12 assists, but does he deserve to be in that game over Darius Garland? I don't think so. I just think that especially when you consider what the Cavs record is right now and what it could potentially be when it's time to select all-stars, they're good enough to justify having 3 of them. When you're maybe like the New York Knicks, who are 15-8, I think they are right now as we record this, you might not get 3 all-stars because your record's just not that good. But at 21-4, and maybe the Cavs are, I don't know, 30-6 or whatever, when we really start having these all-star conversations, that is absolutely good enough for this team to have 3 of them. I think that they should, and I think that they will have 3 All-Stars too.
Yeah, I think they should. I mean, like, the East has been so up and down this year too, so it's like they have the best record in basketball. You would assume that they would get at least 2, and then I think they got 3 playing at that level too as well. Danny, appreciate you for being able to jump on your equivalation of the Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee aside, which you did have to remind me. He is a 3-time champion, which is just a factoid that I will never accept.
And an Olympic gold medalist.
That is crazy how both of those guys from the Washington Wizards teams that were just like real quick question. Do you think that this Wizards team is more goofy than those Wizards teams? The Nick Young, JaVale McGee.
Oh, they're not.
Are they worse?
Those teams were funnier. This team is worse. This Washington Wizards team, like, I made the quip on social media when they were here a couple weeks ago, because Jalen Tyson and Craig Porter Jr. both played with the Cleveland Charge that day. And the Cavs beat the Wizards by so much that those guys got in at the end of the game. Like, they played the last 4 minutes because the Cavs were up by 30. I made the quip that it was really cool for them to get to play against 2 G League teams in the same day. And there were a lot of people laughed at it. I'm very funny. Yes, I get that. But also there were some people that were like, well, this is unprofessional. I'm just sitting there like, well, the Wizards are unprofessional, man. Have you watched them? They're not an NBA team. They're terrible.
Yeah, they're bad, and it keeps getting worse. Like,
they're terrible.
I remember when they did all this stuff where they went after Kyle Kuzma and they traded for Jordan Poole. I was like, that's not going to end well, right? Like, that's too much goof, right, in one room. And then, like, it's just gotten progressively worse. They traded Kristaps. That doesn't look too great right now. Like, it's been, you thought they were in, like, purgatory with the whole John Wall, Bradley Beal thing. And they just keep showing you like, nah, man, it goes deeper and deeper. And they keep stinking in these years where there's not like a guy there that's going to save you if you get the number 1 pick in the lottery. And if there is, they get like the 5th pick because they have horrible luck.
Right. They are dead last in offense, and they are dead last in defense. That's bad. That's historically bad. That is
shocking. That you can be that bad. But Danny, thank you for being on. Where can people find you if they want to see more of you?
Yeah, check out my podcast, Locked on Cavs. You get it everywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Also available on YouTube as well. Just search Locked on Cavs. Also check out my Substack, The Inside Shot. I write about the Cavs just about every day, certainly after every game, and most off days as well. So give that a look, and if you like what you see there, don't mind subscribing.
Definitely. Make sure you guys go check him out. Danny, thank you again for being on. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night. Peace.